He's the former U.S. Trade Representative, also OMB Director, who now serves on the Finance, Homeland Security, Budget, Energy, and Foreign Relations Committee. And Senator Portman, thank you for being here today.
Becky, thanks for having me on. Last time we were on, you announced on the air that Secretary Tillerson was leaving the administration, and today you're announcing to me that Ronny Jackson's withdrawing. So these are always momentous occasions. We have news that breaks every time you come on, and it's perfect to have you here to comment on these issues. What do you think about Ronny Jackson's decision to withdraw from the VA? What does that mean? I think it was probably the right decision for him. You know, Admiral Jackson would have had a bruising confirmation fight, and it's not clear that he had the votes. You know, there are only 50 Republicans voting with John McCain not being present because he can't be. So it's you know, it would have been a tough battle for him. And so I think he probably made the right decision. The VA is the second biggest agency in our government. It's a huge, complex organization. I'm looking for a manager, you know, somebody who's a veteran, and a doctor would be great. But the most important thing, I think, is that the person knows how to manage a complex organization.
Does that mean you were not going to support Jackson if he had gone forward with that?
I was going to, you know, follow the confirmation process as I always do and make my decision once he'd been through his hearings. But I do think a management person is really needed.
Speaking of nominations, Mike Pompeo, his nomination to be Secretary of State made its way out of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Foreign Relations Committee that you serve on yesterday. What do you think? Will he be confirmed by the full Senate?
He'll be confirmed, but it'll be a narrow vote, and I'm disappointed in that. You know, it may be 53, 55 votes for him. John Kerry got 94 votes. Hillary Clinton got 94 votes. You know, it's typical that for secretaries of state, you look at the qualifications, and if the person is qualified, then you assume that you're going to allow the president to pick the person who he thinks would best fit the role. And that's not what people have done in this case. I mean, he's clearly qualified, graduated top of his class at West Point, Army officer, magna cum laude from Harvard Law School. We won't hold that against him. I mean, the guy's bright, he's capable, he's done a good job at the CIA. The State Department needs a morale boost right now. He obviously knows the issues, including what's going on with North Korea. So I think he's the right person, and I'm just disappointed that we don't get more bipartisan support for him to give him more momentum as he goes into the job. But he'll get confirmed today.
Senator, let's talk trade. You're the former U.S. Trade Representative. We now hear that Treasury Secretary Mnuchin is headed to China in the next few days, according to President Trump, to talk through some of those tough trade issues and trade negotiations that we've been hearing.
Well, it's good. It's good that he's going, and we talked about this issue before, but you know, there are four outstanding trade issues. The Korean Free Trade Agreement was renegotiated, I think, in a positive way. That was a success. NAFTA, I think we've got to work very quickly on that. As you know, by next week, if we haven't done something, then the steel exemption that's in place for Canada and Mexico ends. Hope that will be extended. Hope we can get an agreement on NAFTA. We do need to modernize it, but we can't walk away from it. And then we've got the 232 case, which is a steel case, but indirectly affects China. And then, of course, the 301, which is the one that I think Secretary Mnuchin is going to focus on, which is the intellectual property issue with China. And that's a big issue. And Becky, we've talked about this on this program before, but you know, China does not play by the rules. And whether it's a requirement that Chinese companies have a majority share in a company and then they take the technology, or whether it's the hacking, or whether it's simply the requirement that companies provide their intellectual property, whether it's manufacturing processes or more traditional IP, that's just not fair. And so we don't require that over here, and I think we should look for reciprocity.
Let's talk about NAFTA, because we are down to the final hours of when a negotiation can be reached, or when a deal can be reached before Mexico's elections. If we don't see something before that, you're going to have a new president to deal with in Mexico, potentially one that doesn't look too kindly at the U.S. Where do those negotiations stand? How confident do you feel that there will be something that's reached?
Well, my sense is that they are furiously negotiating right now, and you know, as we talk, trying to finalize some issues. But I think they're very close, and Canada and Mexico, I think, would both like to get this behind them for their own purposes, their own elections. But it's certainly in our interest not to have this thing drag on. The president had talked early on about withdrawing from NAFTA. He's now not suggesting that he's going to withdraw, but he is suggesting that he wants a better deal. And I think there are opportunities to improve it and to upgrade it. You know, it's been 20-some years, and the world has changed a lot, including with electronic commerce and standards for labor, environment, and so on. So I think there's an opportunity here to get something done in the next week. I hope they'll do it.
We had the foreign minister from Australia join us earlier this morning, Minister Chobo. his point is that Australia is looking to diversify as much as possible. They have a lot of different trade talks that are coming up. Forget about the TPP. He said those 11 countries that are in that, including Australia, are looking to firm that up, not looking to renegotiate all of it to bring the United States into it. But his point is they're looking to diversify with a lot of different countries so that no one country can really hold them up for ransom. And I just wonder if the United States continues to hit our partners so forcefully, are we going to be in a position where they diversify and they don't rely on us quite as heavily, and then we lose some of our leverage?
No, that's the danger. I mean, this is a risky business, but I do think that with regard to Australia, it's an example of a country that, one, we have a free trade agreement with them. So although we're not part of this larger 11-country agreement, more than half of the countries in that agreement we already have a free trade agreement with. So we are taking advantage of that opening. Second, we have a surplus, by the way.
Right.
In fact, we have a surplus overall with our free trade partners, which is something that I like to remind the administration now and again when they criticize trade agreements, because we only have trade agreements with 10% of the world, and yet we send 47% of our exports to that 10%. And we do have a surplus, barely, but a surplus. And then third, Australia has become, I think, increasingly dependent on China, particularly for its natural resources. And I think that is the potential issue for them. And so I would hope that the United States would not do things that make it more difficult for countries to rely on us. And withdrawing from NAFTA obviously would be an example of that, where Canada and Mexico would have to look for other sources, other places to get imports that they need. And that makes it difficult because you lose market share and it's tough to claw back that market share. So it's a balancing act here. We want trade that has a level playing field for American workers, no question about it. We have to fight for that. But we also have to be sure that other countries don't look elsewhere. America already exports under its weight. We need to export more, and that's good for our economy and great for wages, higher wages, better benefits.
Senator Portman, thank you. I want to thank you again for being our go-to breaking news senator.
We'll wait to see what happens next time, Becky.
Okay.
Nice to talk. Take care.
Thank you.
See you, Andrew.
Okay, coming up.